Hey guys, FilthyRobot here, bringing you another guides, tips, and tricks video, and this time we're going to be talking about classical era civics cards and the first tier of governments that you get options. You get the option of picking. So let's dive right in and start with that. Okay, so government options. You have the chiefdom government, which is just one military and one economic. That's what you're going to have in the ancient era. As soon as you hit the policy here in the civics tree, for political philosophy, you're going to have option of your first government. You're going to be able to choose between 3 governments. Just quickly, every time you are prompted to change every time you hit a new civics tech, every time you get a new tech completed, you have the option of changing your government at no cost to yourself, no negative downside, so long as you choose a government that you haven't chosen before. If you ever go back to a government, so if you picked autocracy now, and then a couple turns later you change to classical republic, and then a couple turns later you change back to autocracy, you're going to take a anarchy or I think it's called anarchy or civil unrest or something like this. So some negative event that occurs when that happens. It happens for a couple turns where you have drastically reduced yields. I think it's 0 for a number of them, and you don't get all your card bonuses going. And it's a big fucking deal, and it's really negative. So maybe in the very late game, you might want to do that if you for some reason had some reason to change between these governments a couple times, but probably not. And you certainly don't want to do it in the early game. So be aware as you pick your governments that you are either committing to staying with it for a while or committing to not having it, because you're going to have to change away from it and not be able to change back. Just FYI. All right, let's talk about the 3 governments available to you and what happens with them. So, autocracy. 2 military slots, 1 economic slot, 1 wildcard policy slot. Your capital gets +1 boost to all yields. What that actually means is you get 1 production, 1 faith, 1 food, 1 culture, 1 gold, 1 science. Is there any I'm missing? I'm not entirely sure. But you just get 1 extra of all the yields available. So it's not that much empire-wide. It's not like it boosts every single tile for each yield by 1. It's not like it's going to change your plantation tile that was your plantation bananas that was 3 food, 1 production, 1 gold. It's not going to become 4 food, 2 production, 2 gold. It's just 1 bonus for the city as a whole. And then 10% bonus on wonder production, plus 1% for every 20 turns on standard speed. Okay, so we have a wonder building bonus there. These the plus percentage every 20 turns tends to be really unimpactful for most of the game. It's rare that the game is going to go long enough for you to get many points in that, especially as you enter different eras. Now, there are some civs like America that modifies this, but it just has not been. The second part of that bonus seems to be very low impact on the games for me so far. So when you're thinking about this, unless it's you have some very strong like faith purchasing strategy that you're going to do for the rest of the game, where you think you're going to be using theocracy forever and ever and ever, you should be thinking about the second part of this bonus as pretty weak, whereas the first part is decent, and you'll keep that decent bonus. All right, Classical Republic. 2 economic slots, 1 diplomacy slot, and 1 wild card slot. Very strong for your bonuses. The downside is you'd have to know that no military bonus can be impactful if you have any sort of war going on. But this is the best set of bonuses to get your empire up and running if you're not worried about war whatsoever. And also you get +1 amenity for every city with a district, and that only requires 1 district, so it's very easy to fulfill that. So it's a quick way to get amenities early. And you get 15% bonus great people points with another 1% great people points every 15 turns on standard speed, which again is going to help you do things like hit your profit timing faster if you're trying to do that, get your first general out faster, although probably you don't want Classical Republic if you're going something that requires that general early, but otherwise get your great people rolling in a way that other governments aren't going to be able to do that for you. This is the best SimCity, no war, pure like infrastructure style government available early. Oligarchy is a little bit more of a mix. I actually think it may even be better than autocracy in combat. We'll talk about why in just a second. It gives you 1 military slot, 1 economic slot, 1 diplomatic slot, and 1 wildcard slot. I have the hardest time giving up the diplomatic slot. I think the diplomatic slot is extremely important. City-state bonuses in this game right now are quite good, and some of them are game-changingly good, and I really want the ability to start accumulating envoy points, and I hate missing that in autocracy. I hate it. I get really frustrated at that. Yes, you can put diplomatic slots in the wildcard slot, but there's other wildcard stuff I want to be using. The wildcard slot is very versatile, very flexible, and very powerful. So I don't wish to be forced to put my diplomatic stuff in there. So I like oligarchy as a whole. All land melee units gain +4 combat strength. This is deceptively worse than it sounds because land melee units make you think horsemen. as well, because horsemen are both a land unit and attack in melee. However, it doesn't refer to those at all. It refers to the melee line of promotions, those being swordsmen, warriors, muskets, and infantry. It may apply to spearmen. I haven't tested that directly. Currently, spearmen get production bonuses that affect melee units, also affect spearmen, but I'm not so sure that combat bonuses that affect spearmen also affect melee units. It's worth testing. Perhaps some of you viewers can let me know, and we can post that in the comments of this thread, but we'll see. But deceptively weaker than I would expect otherwise. 20% experience for combat units plus 1% for every 5 turns. Okay, that's not amazing. It's all right. Certainly promotions are better than no promotions, but I'm not sure that they're as impactful as to merit choosing your government based on that. Basically, anytime I choose oligarchy, I'm choosing it for the slot layout, not for the secondary bonuses here, because I don't think the secondary bonuses are very powerful at all. All right, but let's go ahead and grab just one of these governments so we can talk about the cards that are new to the classical era here. The first of these are the new diplomatic cards, and these are very good, both of them. I run Charismatic Leader pretty much the entire game without stop if I can do it, because this is just increases the influence points per turn that you make towards envoys. You can see your influence points up here. You can see how many you have per turn, and we should look at that too, by the way. The other differences in there. Yeah, okay. Okay, no differences at this level. At other levels of government, there will be differences at how many influence points per turn they gain, I believe, or maybe even not. We'll have to check that in future videos. But for now, it's worth noting that these 3 governments all create initially, without any cards in play, give you the same number of influence points per turn, which is 3 per turn. 3 influence points per turn. So when you plug in this card, this is giving you another 2. That's a huge increase. You're up to 5 from 3, which is a pretty big deal of influence points per turn. We're earning city-state envoys, and envoys are super good. However, Diplomatic League is also quite good. This one tends to be something you want to use very briefly. This is very similar, if you guys remember the conversation, the ancient era policies for talking about land surveyor, the one that lets you buy tiles. This is very similar with Diplomatic League. Ideally, what you do is you only have this active for 1 turn. You tech 2 civics techs down to 1 turn, then you finish one of them, plug Diplomatic League in, put your envoys in other city-states so that the first envoy you send counts as 2 envoys permanently for the rest of the game, and then you change your next turn, you change policies again, you remove this card, and then just go back to using other cards that you want, so you don't waste your other cards by having this in play for a long period of time. It allows you to efficiently get envoys into city-states so you can start building up your bonuses and building up your suzerain statuses. All right, let's talk about the cards that are new to the classical era. Limes. Plus 100% production towards defensive buildings. Meh, don't care. I don't really build defensive buildings very often. I suppose if you are being surprise attacked by someone and you get a moment to plug this in, sure, it will be helpful to get your walls out, I guess. But I don't think very much of it. I've never used it. I've never been in that scenario. But sure, 100% production is a big bonus. So if you have that going for you, if that moment arises when you need it, go ahead and do it. Bastions, plus 6 defense on cities and plus 5 ranged strength. Plus 5 city range defense. This is good, again, for the similar thing. If you're being pushed and you're being pressured in your cities and your cities are taking damage, this is going to be helpful, but it's kind of the thing of last ditch resort again, because it's not a production bonus. So you're not going to be ever getting that unit advantage in terms of producing more units faster than your opponent. This is a very desperate, oh shit, I need this city to live style bonus. Okay, I guess, for that moment, but not particularly powerful. As a whole, you're not going to be using it very often. Veterancy, 30% production towards encampment districts and buildings for that district. This is useful. I don't use it very often because most of the time I don't build encampments too often. I build encampments on my borders near my opponents, and I build encampments when I have not enough strategic resources so I can produce the units that I want. However, 30% production is okay. Certainly, if I'm building a couple encampments or building an early encampment, it'd be nice to get a production boost towards that so I don't have to pay full cost. I mean, generally, the whole point of the government systems and the card system, the civic card system in general, is that players who spend the effort to actually apply the cards that are going to help them the most in every scenario are supposed to get ahead in terms of production to the players who do not. So certainly anytime you see a card that has a bonus to a specific type of production, you should be trying to plug that card in if it actually benefits you to do that. You got to be careful, because if you're building an encampment in one city and a 30% production bonus is 2 or 3 hammers, say it's a small city, that may not be as good as some of these other production bonus. If you're building an encampment in one city and you're building horsemen in 3 cities, for example, you're going to want the horseman bonus in in your total empire. So just be aware when you're making a decision about plugging a card in. What are your other cities doing? It's easy to be like, oh, this city wants to build this, I'm going to give it the bonus for it, and forget about the fact that you have 4 other cities doing different things. Raid, I think raid is nearly useless. This is yields gained from pillaging are doubled for pillaging improvements. Again, I don't like pillaging very much. It's very takes you 3 movement points to pillage, or 3 action points to pillage, which are a lot, and most of the time the tiles you're pillaging don't heal you. So you are getting things like gold and science and culture, which is nice. It's nice to get those, and certainly if I had the choice, I'd take double those instead of the regular base on that. But a lot of times I don't want to pillage districts because I have to go repair those districts after I take the city. A lot of times I don't have. It's not a scenario where I have just infinite units and my units are able to roam around their territory pillaging everything because they do nothing. Generally, if my units get deeper into their territory, I run into their reinforcements and their city shots, and my units are going to be attacked and killed. And generally, if it's a close battle, I want my units close to the front line where they're actually useful for fighting, not so much useful for pillaging. I don't think very much of this card at all. I almost never use it. I think it's fairly garbage. Conscription, we've already talked about. Maneuver, we've talked about. Maritime, these are all, looks like it does sort them by era. That's useful. I didn't realize it actually did that. Cool. These are the ancient era cards. We've talked about them in the past. All right, let's move on to the economic policies new to the classical era. Scripture, plus 100% holy site adjacency bonuses. There are some civilizations that may be able to take use of this. In particular, I'm thinking Russia. In particular, I'm thinking any civs that have picked up some of the weaker pantheons that are situationally good, like pantheons that give it extra faith from tundra near them, things like this. This may be useful some of the time, but what it tends to be is a very small amount of bonus towards one of the weakest resources in the game. Faith is just not a very strong resource right now, and having a 100% holy site adjacency bonus modifier, it's not everything, it's just the adjacency modifier gets 100% boost, is not very much. I almost never use this one, although sometimes I do when I'm trying to maximize faith gain for some sort of faith purchasing strategy. Natural philosophy, 100% campus district adjacency bonus. Science is a lot better of a yield than faith in general. This is a better bonus as a whole. It's still a fairly small bonus unless you are like in the middle of some deep rainforest or something, or have a million mountains around you where you can put a campus that has like 4 mountain tiles surrounding it or something. Most of the time, this is not a very big bonus. And there will be times when you want that because science is extremely important in this game, just like all the Civ series. I don't think this is super powerful. I rarely run it. I almost always prefer production in the early game. But in the mid to late game, especially if I manage to get a couple of the policy enhancing wonders, I may actually switch to this at some point for the extra science. Insulae is pretty decent. This is +1 housing in all cities with at least 2 specialty districts. In the mid game, the late early game, and the mid game, you're going to have housing issues in your cities, especially your capital, as you run out of tiles to improve to get the housing bonuses off plantations and pastures and farms and fishing boats. That gives you some housing, and aqueducts can give you a little bit of housing. Even if you're on a river, it can give you 2 housing. And the granary, of course, gives you housing, but you will run out of housing, especially in your larger, older cities. And this can be nice to keep them, get them a little bit more population in that city to do that. And you can do things too, like use it to grow more efficiently, and then remove the card and understand that, plan on the fact you're going to stagnate, but you still got there quicker, and then you can drop it out and work pure production until you have your next level of better housing policy available to you. So this can be a pretty strong policy. I quite like this policy. All right, the rest of these are ancient era ones that we've talked about in the ancient era video, and then the same with these. Oh no, we have one new one in here. We have the great writer points per turn here on literary tradition. This is crap. This is pretty much total crap. Great writers are probably the worst great person in the game right now, and the problem is that they are available so early and there's so few slots for them. So even when you do a tourism victory, even when you are deliberately maximizing the number of writers, artists, and musicians that you create, you're still highly restricted on great writer slots to put their great writing works in. Each city can build an amphitheater. The amphitheater has 1 slot for that. A couple wonders are able to take great writer slots, and the capital itself is able to hold, I think, let's take a look. How many can it hold? Wrong one. I don't have a great writer slot quite yet. Don't have the page that I'm looking for. The palace itself is able to hold some. I can't remember if it's 1 or 2 right now, or maybe 3. It might be 3. But either way, it's not a lot. So yeah, maybe there is something to be said about getting some early tourism out to let that tourism tick across the course of the game. So maybe one early writer is okay. But I think this is too early for me to really care about them because in the late game I'll have 1 million writers as I run all my Theater Square projects and generate all those great points, and those writers are going to have nowhere to go. So I'm not overly keen about in the early game spending one of my valuable resource slots, in particular the wildcard slot, which could have a second economic policy, for getting great writer points that are likely going to be superfluous later on in the game when I already have way too many writers for the number of slots I have. All right, guys, so that is done with us talking about the classical era card slots. Hopefully this has been useful for you guys. I'm going to keep going with this series, I believe, and break down each of the card slots that are available through each of the eras and try to give you a sense of how strong and weak I find them, as well as the governments that are available. So if you enjoyed it, please hit the subscribe button here on YouTube. Go check me out on Twitch and follow me there. And I create a lot of Civ6 content. Hopefully you guys are enjoying it. And I will see you guys soon. Thanks for watching. Filthy out.